Welcome to B1 Ministries, a podcast for the outcast. Spiritual conversations for everyday people. Come on. B1 with your universe. B1 with love for all humanity. B1. Spiritual conversations for everyday people. B1 with love for all humanity.
All right. B1Love, B1 Ministries, here in what's this called? Waldport, Oregon, right down from that'd be Newport. And here with some dear friends, and they've actually allowed us to come and hang out in their home for last 3 days or so. And it's just been a blessing to have my daughters and my wife hanging out with you guys, and podcast for the outcast, spiritual conversations for everyday people. And just to kind of lean into your time in ministry, and I mean, you guys have done a ton in a lot of different places, and I'm sure that in that experience you've had to kind of take one for the team where love's concerned a whole lot of different times, and especially when people get perceptions of what things should be or what you mean by what you said, or and when you're trying to lead a group of people to ultimately love other people, you know, how has that played out for your family and your life?
So, I mean, there's been some severe hurt, because when you truly believe the things that Jesus said about giving yourself away and truly giving love, and so you open up your heart like that, you don't expect what's going to come back at you. It feels like you should, you know, by opening up like that people are going to reciprocate.
Right.
And too often what we found is that people might want to take it in, they don't want to give it back, and they're a little challenged by the fact that you might expect them, as you're, you know, trying to lead them, that this, you know, I'm modeling it for you, but I want you to embrace loving and giving your life away. Right. And they don't really want to do that. They like being on the receiving end.
Right. And how do you keep giving in that situation? Because that's really challenging for most. I mean, I know I struggle with it, like after three times you're out theory, and but you know, Jesus obviously said 70 times 7 or whatever, and that's a pretty big equation. So what do you do to self-heal enough to continue that process of loving no matter what? Like, how does that play out in your life? I know for me, I do a gratitude list, 3 things every morning, try not to use the same 3, just to make sure that I'm in that place when I start my day, because things are kind of different in my day when I start with gratitude, no matter what the circumstances are. But what do you do to do that for yourself?
I'm going to start this one. For me personally, the golden rule was always my thing in the past. I'm going to do for others what I want them to do for me. But that still drains you because you're not getting back. Right. Recently, we had a very wise person say, be the person you want to be. Doesn't matter what they do. Just be who you want to be. And that made me rethink, like, oh yeah, so just because they do something to me doesn't mean it has to change me. So I just try to be me. Who am I? And sometimes that's the challenge in itself, is to figure out who am I, because I'm a good one that just kind of reflects what the people around me need. So it's hard for me to just sit back and say, who am I? Who do I want to be? And then be that person.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, good question for you. And this is a thing that we don't hear a lot about, but wives of men in ministry. Like, because we tend to just blinders on, going towards this goal, whatever it takes. How do you support a guy in ministry? Like, because that's a very exhausting, depleting from the family structure a lot of the time. And how did you work through that?
I think, honestly, I always wanted to do this when I was a little girl. And so I thought I was ready for it. But the interesting thing is some of the best leaders are your type A personalities, but they don't usually seek out type A wives. That doesn't work. So we end up, us introverts have to be out in the limelight, and that's really hard. So I think for me, it's trying to stay as back as I can and support him in what he's doing and keep as much things going as possible, but trying not to get lost in it. You know, trying to find my place in it. And I didn't always succeed at that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've learned more in the last couple of years than I ever knew when we were actually in ministry. So that's the hard part. I don't think I always succeeded, but I just kept going. I'm definitely not a quitter, so I just kept going and trying to better myself, learn how to be an extroverted introvert as much as I could to make other people comfortable. So.
And so we talked a little bit about, you know, you've chosen to be atheist, but you still believe in Jesus' teachings and this type of thing. And we also talked about, you know, other religions, and you can still be a Jesus follower and be a Buddhist or be a whatever. How has that played out for you in terms of, I guess I'm going to use the word banished from a specific kind of Baptist or da-da-da, because of that universal belief system within your heart and soul, to the point where, you know, I just don't even want to do that specific thing anymore. I'm just going to do us and keep being the loving people that we are, that would be opening their home to, like, my wife and my daughters, because it's just what you do. Like, what was that like for you to actually make that transition, especially after many years dedicated to a very specific, like, road in that whole religion-y structure? Like, how did that play out for you?
So because both of us are, our fathers are both ministers in fundamental Baptist circles, we grew up with kind of the idea that the only way to express this kind of love that we're talking about, that is kind of the focus of B1, that the only way for that to happen had to be within the venue of a church building, and maybe it didn't always happen in the building, but it was very focused on church stuff. And because of the pain we experienced with, you know, being sued by a church and having a denomination pull out our funding a few weeks before Christmas and stuff, for us it was a journey of saying, if we still believe in these teachings, like in our heart, the teachings of Jesus about giving your life away, that where you find eternal life, and for me that's not anymore about, you know, anything after this life, but the really fulfilling life comes from giving my life away. Right. And so part of that also then is the thing that Jesus taught, like, in order to participate in that, you have to hate your father and mother, and not so much that you have to hate them, but you're making choices that they may disagree with so much that they perceive it as hate. And so for us it was then finding this way to be free of saying that expressing this love that Jesus talked about doesn't have to happen as a church member. And so for me, I've found now I'm actively involved in healthcare for people in poverty and social justice issues that don't necessarily happen in a church setting, but I find it's very relevant, and it feeds my soul that I feel like I'm following what Jesus said. And yet our parents find that we have become heretics, that we've departed and we lost our way.
And the funny thing about that is, this is kind of why I started the whole B1 thing, is that those are the things Jesus was doing.
Right.
Like, he wasn't hanging out with the super smart and the luxury and
and the church leaders.
And the church leaders. In fact, they were getting it completely wrong. You know, it was so, in this day and age, I guess it would be collegiate thinking, or, you know, that whole theology and da-da-da-da, and this verbatim, take a little chunk of this and make it into that. And, you know, and I love simplicity, you know, and simplicity for me, I think, is just a truth that is innate within. You don't really got to read about it, or, I mean, it's nice to know Jesus' words because that helps to have some kind of, I guess, you know, roadmap to what does that look like, right? But at the end of the day, there's this little inner compass that you know. What you know is what you know, and just do that. Because you always have this little weird feeling when you know you're going to a little to the left, or selfishness, or it's about me, or whatever. And so, you know, my hat's off to you guys for, you know, giving your life to so many for so long, and still continuing to do it, just finding different avenues to do that. And I tend to do the same thing because my church is a not-for-profit that has the same structure. We have a couple men's groups, and we break bread and have Bible study, but it's really informal, super chill, you know what I mean? But the structure, there's a executive director, which is kind of our pastor and his first lady, but it's not a church. And people ask me, like, oh, where you go to church? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm the chair of dads and been there for 13 years. And no, I mean, what church do you go to? I'm like, yeah, that's my church. Well, you also got to go to it. Not really, because my time, my talent, everything that I've been given, I believe that's where I tithe. That's where I tithe my time, my love, and I really don't have the bandwidth to do that and go to a church and they go, oh, you're a leadership guy, let's put you on this board, or da-da-da. Right. And so I just can't stretch myself or my family or my wife any further in that, because we're both professionals. We have professional careers outside of ministry. So, but that's kind of odd to some people. Yeah. You know?
And I think what I've seen is that there are some people within a traditional church structure, very few from my perspective, that I see that genuine love. But I also have seen it in people who are, that would blaspheme the name of Jesus, you know, in a way that's be very offensive to Christians. And yet I would say to my one friend in Iowa, like, you can blaspheme the name of Jesus, but the way you live your life, like this genuine love pours out for the homeless, for the disabled, in a way that I go, see, but you're really following Jesus. And to me, that's more important. You know, kind of a theological term they talk about, orthodoxy, which is, are you following the right teachings? And for me, when I look at Jesus, I think everything Jesus said, and even, you know, the apostles said, was, what really matters isn't what you say you believe, it's what you live. And, you know, like you read the book of 1 John, and he talks about, this is how you know, if you love one another, and if you have love.
Favorite scripture.
And so for me, you know, we talked about your wife Shannon, like, Shannon sometimes puts up this wall of being really hard and stuff, but for me, when I met her and I knew, like, there's this genuine love for kids, and she loves to do that. And no matter what kind of wall she puts up, that love pours out. And I've seen that in so many different people where...
With different things.
With different faiths. Where, but then there's also, in every one of those faith groups, it seems like there's a lot of people that will say the right words, but it's not coming out. Right. And so I think there really is a way that you can, you know, be around somebody for a short amount of time and be able to tell...
Yes.
Do they have that love? Are they committed to kind of that selfless, giving my life away for people who need that love?
Yeah, in our circles, we call it the scent of Jesus. Yeah. Like there's a, you know, his sheep will hear my voice kind of thing. And so with, we don't have a whole lot more time, but I wanted to just, I always ask the question in your experience, and if you had, we'll say, 3 minutes to have a statement to the world of an encouraging how to lean into this thing called love despite all the craziness of the world, what would you do with that 3 minutes?
Oh my gosh, it's a great question. I wish I had more than 10 seconds to think about it.
I meant, well, you got 4 minutes, so but it's I love catching it impromptu because you get the thick of it.
Right. So for me, I just say that I've been in the place of trying to pursue, getting ahead financially, or, pursuing intellectual stuff. And kind of what in Ecclesiastes he talks about all of the pursuits he tried to find to scratch the emptiness in his own soul by pursuing all this stuff. And yet what he found was that he needed to pursue God. And for me, what that means is, even though I don't believe, the traditional Christian doctrines about Jesus being God or whatever, but I am convinced that pursuing the teachings of Jesus radically changes where you find happiness and how you find happiness, and that you realize that true happiness comes from giving your life away, even if no one else knows about it, no one ever finds out about it. There's no monument built when you die or anything, but that you have found, you drank from this well of this living water, and it filled your own life with that love that you're trying to give away suddenly just rushes in and fills up your own life. And it comes from giving away to the people who are most oppressed, most broken down, and in most need. And I think I come back to, Jesus, the parable he talked about when the people would come enter the kingdom and say, Father, let me in. And he says, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me to drink. When I was in prison, you didn't visit me. And then others who didn't pursue all the religious stuff were like, he's like, enter into my kingdom. And
they're like, I don't even know you.
You can edit this out, right?
We're good. Real life stuff.
And but then others said, yeah, we didn't know you. When did we feed you? When did we give you to drink? When did we visit you? And when you did it to the least of these. And so when I pour my life out, whether it's, with the homeless, with the most impoverished people in my county who struggle to get health care, who struggle to, dealing with law enforcement or whatever, and when I can be part of their journey in a way that they might not even know, I believe that is giving in that way, that it's that exchange of love that Jesus talked about.
And you're never empty. The ironic part is it seems as if you give, you're depleted of, but the more you give of this magical thing, that this universal binding of this energy called love, you tend to have more than you could ever give away.
Yeah.
And that's the coolest part about it. And I love the analogy of the Dead Sea. Things come in, but they don't go out, and it becomes stagnated and kind of ew. But a river that flows is always fresh. And so I try to kind of think of love that way, receiving it and giving it, receiving it and giving it, because it keeps this flow through me. You know what I mean? To keep my whatever clean,
Yeah.
Because if you just gimme, and you're just holding on to this thing, it sits there and gets all ew. You know what I mean? So I don't want my love to be ew.
Yep.
That's just not cool. Especially the love I was given didn't come that way. It came pure and clean and rich, with all the minerals I need to continue on. So 2 minutes, same question.
Well, I would say I have more time to think about this. So my first tattoo I got was this one, and it's the infinite triangle. And I would say this kind of embodies what I started trying to live out. So it's I used to say I'm in God and God's in me, the red heart is me.
Right.
And now I'd say I am in infinity. I mean, the universe is within me and I'm in the universe. And the more I live out just whatever I feel, like you said, you have this feeling in your inside you. In church circles, it would be the Spirit. You have the Spirit inside you. If you listen to the Spirit and you live the Spirit, it's always there and you're always in tune. And when you don't, that's when you start to not feel full, not feel.
Right.
And so, like I said before, I just try to be me. I find out who the real me is. I be me, and then I never run dry, kind of thing.
That's beautiful. So that's going to wrap up this episode, and thank you so much for opening your home to my wife and
You're
our
welcome.
daughters.
It was our pleasure.
And we've had a really, really good time just hanging out. Much needed R&R. Just, me and Shannon are just off.
And it was a blast.
Yeah.
You mentioned that we have this gift of hospitality, and we haven't been able to express it much, and so for us it was a blast to meet your daughter and hang out, and it was fabulous weekend.
So we're super grateful for that. So B1 Ministries, B1Love, podcast for the outcast, spiritual conversations for everyday people. You gotta see this one. Amen. Have a good one.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Will.
guys.
Thanks.
Welcome to B1 Ministries, a podcast for the outcast. Spiritual conversations for everyday people. Come on. B1 with your universe. B1 with love for all humanity. B1. Spiritual conversations for everyday people. B1 with love for all humanity.